I was really digging that countdown music. That's nice.
Hello, everybody. Welcome to our first Geeks Unleashed YouTube movie review.
Yes, please be gentle with us. It's our first one, so.
Sorry, I'm Mark, and
I'm Jasmine.
Feel free to. Welcome to our Geeks Unleashed YouTube movie review. What we normally do is have a weekly podcast where we discuss weekly news and reviews. But for 2021, we've decided to also do weekly movie reviews on YouTube. This week we'll be starting with Wonder Woman 1984, and then we will be going weekly from then on, starting with The Man of Steel and working our way through the DCEU.
And obviously, this is a spoiler warning. It is a review show, so if you have not had a chance to watch Wonder Woman 1984 or Wonder Woman 84, you might want to pause this and come back and check us out once you've actually seen it, because, yeah, we're getting into all the nitty-gritty with this movie.
So this is the sequel to 2017's Wonder Woman, making this the 9th installment of the DC's extended universe.
God, it doesn't feel like it's been that many. I guess it's just been spread out so much longer.
I know. I'll be honest, I didn't think that when I wrote this down earlier.
yeah, it wasn't until we actually listed out everything, and I was like, oh my gosh, there've been quite a few movies actually. So Wonder Woman 84 stars Gal Gadot returning as Diana Prince, Wonder Woman. Chris Pine is back as Steve Trevor. Kristen Wiig is new, starring as Barbara Minerva, or Cheetah. Pedro Pascal as Maxwell Lord. Robin Wright is back as Antioch, and Connie Nielsen is also back as Hippolyta. So lots of familiar faces, just a couple of new faces in this one.
Yeah, and it's directed by Patty Jenkins, and the screenplay is also by Patty Jenkins, Jeff Johns, and Dave Callum. And it was also released. Well, it was released on the 16th of December in movie theatres in the UK, and followed by pay-per-view last week in the UK, and in the United States, simultaneously released on the 25th of December in theatres and on HBO Max.
Yeah, so you still have 4 or 5 days to get that watch in on HBO Max before it leaves.
So I think that actually is kind of a nice jumping off point there about the whole experience of when it came out, because on our weekly podcast, that was something that, so our weekly podcast started in June in 2020, and throughout our podcast we kept talking about the pushback of the movie release date, and it kept getting pushed back until eventually they did say no, it's coming out Christmas time. So as we all know, COVID-19 wrecked many things, including movie experiences and movies in general. I think it's probably a good thing to talk about. Actually, it's just the actual experience of watching this at home versus online, and sorry, online at home versus movie theaters. And we both watched this at home. And historically, I would have gone to the cinema to have seen this. Would you?
Definitely, yes.
Yeah. This would have been something I would have watched at home, and I think for me, I would much rather have seen it at the cinema. And having young kids, and I ended up splitting this on first viewing across 2 nights, which is just something you wouldn't do when you go to the cinema. You're committed to that to that thing. How did you watch it?
I actually watched it with someone else, so we kind of had ordered pizza and stayed in and watched it. But it was one of those things I mean, they don't have kids either, so we kept pausing it because it was kind of what is going on? And so it was a really long movie to begin with. I think it had a runtime of 2.5 hours, but it took us probably 3.5 to watch it, because we did keep pausing it to be what the heck is happening right now?
Yeah. I mean, that's the thing as well. When you're at home, there is that ability to pause things or click on your phone and that kind of thing. So I didn't really. I mean, it's nice to be at home with your family and over Christmas and the holiday period, and it was actually a nice film to sort of sit down and have family viewing. But I would much rather have got to see this at the cinema. So this did come out just before the sort of the lockdown that happened here in the UK. But I planned to go over the Christmas period, but we got sort of put into different tier systems, and the cinemas closed, and unfortunately just wasn't able to go, so I had to wait until sort of pay-per-view had happened. So yeah, yeah. So I was just disappointed with really how we had to go about watching things, but at least we did get one decent superhero movie come out at the end of last year. So
decent. I don't know. I mean, we got a superhero movie that came out this year. I don't know that I'd call it decent.
well, out of the, I think what did we have last year? We had Bloodshot, New Mutants. Is that it? I think out of the three of them, this is probably the best one.
Well, okay. Given that company, okay, maybe.
Yeah. I think that's probably where I was putting this. So,
gotcha. Okay, I was gonna say.
Because I mean, so we had Bloodshot originally, and we had Bloodshot originally, and we got someone here. I mean, when I say decent, sorry, it's probably a slip of the
Hey, Rose, welcome.
I mean, decent in its company of other superhero films.
Well, I mean, like if you're gonna go ahead and compare it to Bloodshot and New Mutants, okay, fine. Then this movie is decent. But if you're gonna compare this movie to its predecessor, there's absolutely no comparison. I think that was probably the biggest problem. Like overall, I enjoyed the first Wonder Woman so much. I mean, everything about it was so good. So maybe it's my fault, but I had like really high expectations for for this second movie, and oh man, it did not deliver on anything. The one great thing about this film was whoever did the makeup for Wonder Woman when she was in that gold armor toward the end of the film. Her eyeliner was phenomenal. I mean, it was absolutely gorgeous. So her makeup and the costuming was great, but everything else is very, very iffy.
There we go. It's not the worst movie at all, but it can't be said to be good at all. Well, yeah, no, I know. I'm gonna probably be kicked to this decent comment now, but I think from its company it was the best of what we had, but it's gonna be one of
those things where it's like it's always got an asterisk, right? Like everything about 2020 has like an asterisk next to it because it's kind of like it was okay, but is it only okay because it was 2020 and everything else in 2020 was so awful?
Oh yeah, I think if there'd been no COVID we'd have had like Black Widow and everything else, then
Now, if we had not had any COVID, and then we would have had Black Widow, we would have had the sequel to Top Gun, we would have had a lot more stuff come out. That was big action-packed films, like the 9th Fast and Furious would have been out. I mean, I think Wonder Woman would have gotten drowned by all of those films if it had come out in the same time frame as the rest of them.
Okay, so we're not going to recap the movie point by point, but we're actually just going to go through like plot points. So we're actually just going to break it down by character. So the movie starts at Themyscira with young Diana in training, who is in competition. I love this early sequence as her as a child. I thought this was probably my favourite parts of the movie. What do you think of it?
I think there's definitely a more interesting story with what happened in Themyscira before Steve Trevor got there. So it would have been cool to see a little bit more of that. It was nice that they brought in like a younger version than what we got in the last film. But
I keep trying to say it's not
coming out.
No, it's not
but I did enjoy it. I thought all of the stuff in Themyscira was really cool. And it gave you a good look at, all of the other Amazons, and it kind of just showed that Diana really didn't get special treatment, and that when she thought she could cheat and get away with not actually finishing the course, her name escapes me now, but Robin Wright was kind of just like, nope, you cannot finish this race because you cheated.
No, yeah, I think it was a good lesson for her to learn about. She said something along the lines to her about this is not about being something of greatness. I can't remember the exact line now, but it was a really great moment, and I'm glad that they spent I think it was 10-15 minutes of the film there, which I think made me think a little bit of. I know Man of Steel kind of spent a good sort of half an hour on Krypton, but this was quite a nice start to the film. I felt like setting this there, but anyway, then we kind of jump to the 80s where we get sort of a nice little sort of sequence of things before we eventually see modern Wonder Woman, who's saving people but in secret. And this is something that frustrated me as the movie went on. And I'll talk about it later. But says there is a child beating grown women like others. So well, I guess fine too.
Because the other girls aren't half gods.
In the early sequence, but no. So when we come to the 80s, you obviously see the terrible 80s fashion, which I've always never enjoyed, and all the men seem to have terrible, like Magnum PI mustaches. And,
yes, they all look like they walked right off of a TV show set in the 80s.
But what I thought was like you were seeing Diana save people with like her foot, but then suddenly she bursts into the shopping mall, which I just thought was ridiculous. Her crown goes around the whole shopping mall and kills all the cameras. But there's 300-400 people that saw her. Like I know they didn't have mobile phones back then, but people did have cameras with the actual film cameras.
Yeah.
You tell me not one person in that whole place didn't have a camera. There must have had one, or even there must have been back then. Shops with cameras were a big thing as well.
Yeah.
So.
And I think that's where the movie started wrong. Like with all the superhero movies, this was a point that I had noted also. But like superhero movies, you automatically walk into the movie and you have this unassumed suspension of belief, right? Like you walk in assuming like, oh well, I know that this guy flies, or I know that this guy can walk through walls. Like you've already bought into some odd, non-believable thing is going to happen in this film, but they didn't set this up properly. So from the very beginning, it's just like you said, like it's just this questionable thing. Like you're running through the mall and all of these people that have seen you are supposed to not say anything. Like I appreciated the whole like wink and a nod between her and the little girl, but like the crown taking her tiara, whatever it's called, taking out the cameras and her and the lasso. It's just like this is not what I was expecting. So to start the film off with that level of cheese, it was just kind of like this is not the tone that I thought would be happening for this film. So it already put a bad taste in my mouth, and it was like it's going to be really hard to get behind this just because you've already started off poorly.
I think they dug themselves into a hole. They wanted to set it in the 80s, but all the previous films that happened, they'd already said that she sort of not done anything between Lee and
Yes! I kept going back to that from the Justice League when and people can get mad at me if they want, but Bruce Wayne was right. Like he was the one that said you really can't judge anyone because you sat around for so long after Steve Trevor died and you didn't do anything. And so we kind of see her dabbling here and there in the 80s, and it was kind of like, but you said she didn't do anything. Like, so the hell, like your continuity is not even working properly.
No. So, after that, they have this montage of scenes with Diana and her loneliness, and there's things about,
you go to a restaurant and then they pick up all the extra place settings so that you're definitely alone at the table. Yeah.
Yeah, they went up to her and said something like, you waiting for someone? She's like, no, just me. And then she walks out to the cab, and then she's like, then I'll share a lift. And it's like, no, I'll wait. And it's this whole unnecessary set.
Yeah, it's like, we get it. We get it.
Playing in the background, really trying to really bring it home that she's sad and lonely, and she's been walking around for 60 years on her own, which, okay, I think if you've seen the trailer, you knew Steve Trevor was coming back. So, it's setting up this whole thing that she's not moved on. I don't know, it's just unnecessary. I can't believe someone can't move on in 60 years. So.
Yeah, I think that was, but it also kind of reminded me of Captain America. But in his defense, he was sort of frozen in ice for 60 or 80 years or something like that. So, he technically wasn't conscious the entire time, so he gets a pass for his pining after the same person for decades. But Diana doesn't have an excuse. Like the guy that she was in love with, he literally went out in a blaze of glory. He died a hero. What is there for you to be? I don't know.
I think with Captain America though, like your point there, he was frozen in ice. So when he went on the plane into the water, he arrived in current time, like, you know, the next day. So
yeah.
Oh,
there it is. Bless you.
no, hold on a second, sources. She's a grieving widow, but we never questioned Superman's loneliness.
Well, Superman wasn't that lonely, though, because he didn't have anybody like Lois until he actually met Lois.
Yeah.
So
I don't think I'm questioning her grieving. I'm sure she did grieve for a long time after Steve died. Like, but I just feel 60 years would someone still be grieving? I don't know. I mean, I guess first love could linger with someone a long time, but
60 years?
I mean, I don't, yeah, I mean,
but like, if this isn't she semi-immortal? Is she immortal? Like, that just, you can't possibly be planning to waste centuries of your life on this dead human. I can't imagine that.
No. So yeah, I think you've put down here about you know, her unshakable sense of purpose. Like, I mean, so how what are your thoughts really on just what her purpose is then? Because I know we see her going to the museum and sort of being lonely, but I
think she falls into museum work just because she likes old things. Yeah. But it also kind of probably just gives her mind something to do. But yeah. I don't mind her career choice. Like, I don't mind that part of it. I don't mind that she's like a historian or she's an art historian or something like that. But just, it bugs me because she's one of the most powerful women in the world. And they really just set this film up like she cannot function without a man. And it really pissed me off.
Yeah. Do you know, that's something I've written about actually later on, like towards the bottom of this. Like, was about her, about being on her own. Could we have done the film without a love interest? Like, I'll come back to that later. But so I don't really feel that Diana had much of a plot of her own, other than interacting with Steve, interacting with Matt, Lord, and then later, with Barbara. But I don't really feel there was anything that really drove her from the beginning of the film to the end of the film, you know, like where most characters are given a plot. Like Max Lord is given a plot. Max Lord has a plot throughout the start to finish. And Steve Trevor, in some ways, has a plot because, you know, it's about him reconciling that his life is over. And, and even in some ways, his plot is helping Diana. But we'll come to him. But so a couple of things I want to talk about with her powers as well. So she steals an airplane later on in the film, Chris Pine. We'll talk about Chris Pine in a minute. But so she steals an airplane at the Smithsonian. And then this really annoyed me. Out of nowhere, she suddenly goes, "Oh, by the way, I can turn things invisible."
Thank you.
And I was just like, when she did that, I was like, could you not have maybe like did this a little bit earlier in the film? Like, even if it was like on that montage of loneliness where she just went home and you just see her maybe trying to hone her skills and stuff like that, that would have been quite cool. Like, or even during the training as a child, maybe that could have been part of the
yes, exactly.
You know, to know that was something that she could do. But just all of a sudden, I mean, it just, to me, that just really smacked of, I hate to say it, poor writing. Like, you know.
Yeah, but that was the thing. Like, since they didn't establish the suspension of belief at the very beginning of the film, then when they got to this part, I was like, come on, seriously? Like, oh, yeah, that's right. I'm, you know, Zeus is my father, so hold on here. Let me just make this whole jet invisible. No, the whole invisibility thing really pissed me off. And then the jet itself, like, okay, so I did a bunch of research after the movie was over, and I was like, okay, I understand that, you know, her jet was invisible and her jet could, yes, thank you, Reels, yes, it would still show up on radar if it was freaking invisible. That was the first thing out of my mouth when that scene happened. But this plane, there's no way this plane would be able to fly from Washington, D.C. to Egypt in one tank of gas?
Maybe Wonder Woman's powers also can produce petrol now. Like, I don't know.
I don't know. But like that whole sequence was so bad. And it was bad because they were very bad at establishing the suspension of belief at the beginning. So it was like, I understand that in the comics, Wonder Woman's jet could be supersonic and it fly like 2,000 or 2,400 miles per hour. That's great. But this is a man-made old jet, not even a current jet. It's a man-made old jet with like a fuel capacity of 700 miles. It's 5,000 miles from Washington, D.C. to Egypt. Come on. Like, that plane would have needed to refuel 4 or 5 times before it got there.
And also, it was towards the end of the film where she starts flying. Now, she didn't fly in Justice League. She didn't fly in Batman vs. Superman. And now suddenly she can fly in 1984. Does something happen between 1984, and 2000 and whatever it is when the first one came out? Because, I don't know, it was another plot hole. But, I love the fact that she suddenly learned to fly.
I assumed that she could fly in Justice League, though. You don't really see her flying, but you only see her driving once.
So maybe
when, like, on the scene where they're all on the roof with talking to Gordon with the bat symbol, and everybody else disappears except for Flash. So I assumed that she could fly by then. I didn't mind the whole flying sequence. I think her, like, attributing that part of herself to Steve, okay, fine. Like, I'll give you that much. So I didn't mind that. What I did not like was her riding lightning with the lasso. I was like, oh, this is a bit much too.
You saw that in the trailer, actually. I didn't mind it for the lasso and the lightning thing too much, but it is still ridiculous.
But again, like, if they had established a bunch of stuff better at the beginning, like, by the time you get to the 3/4 of the way through the movie, you'd be like, yeah, she's riding on lightning, that's badass. But the whole time up into that, you were like, I don't know about this. I just don't know about this.
So let's talk about Steve Trevor, who played by Chris Pine, who, I'll be honest with you, he's a great actor. I love him. Part of me is glad he's back, but another part of me isn't.
but like, what, other than to give her purpose, what was his purpose in this film? He served no purpose in this film.
So when I watched this movie twice. Like, I watched it once just for enjoyment, like with my family, and split over 2 nights. I watched the second time for the review and took notes as I was going and stuff. And I remember even on the first time I watched it, I really was annoyed about so much of the movie, and I was really trying to step back and question what did they want to achieve when they made this film? Like, was it, okay, we messed up, we should have put Chris Pine, we shouldn't have killed Chris Pine off? Or was it that they sat down and go, how can we bring Chris Pine back? I don't know. I just would love to know what the motivations were for the script. Was it because, so I was thinking that, so you've got this wish stone to bring things back. And so was it like, okay, so we want to bring Steve Trevor back. So how can we bring Steve Trevor back and make it sort of realistic in terms of the film, not realistic in real life, but realistic in terms of...
We've already thrown that out the window.
Yeah. So how can we make it realistic that we can bring back someone who, like you say, died in a blaze of glory back into this franchise, but we know that we can't keep him because he's not alive when she meets Bruce Wayne and Clark Kent in the future. So they've sort of dug themselves a hole in the future, but they've dug themselves a hole from their own necessity for the desire to bring Chris Pine back. Now, I have to question, why do they want to bring Chris Pine back? Yeah, okay, he was amazing in the first film. The chemistry between the two of them as actors, I think, was great.
But he had a great ending in the first film.
But it was a great ending, and like, you didn't need to bring Chris Pine back.
Right.
And so, I did write this later on in the film, in my notes here, but actually, would the film have been better if there was no love interest or a different love interest? So there's 2 different things there. Like, I would have actually been quite happy to have had no love interest in this movie. Like, I wouldn't have wanted Mopey Diana, but I would have wanted it that actually she'd gained a different sense of purpose potentially. Helping people but doing it secretly. And if you're trying to do it secretly, don't wear the costume of Wonder Woman.
Or they could have established like an actual friendship between Diana and Barbara, and then it could have been like you're doing this and you're finally stepping out of the shadows because you want to help your friend. Like, you genuinely want to help a friend, as opposed to, oh well, let's just turn this whole thing into I need the one thing that I could possibly want in the entire universe is my dead boyfriend to come back. And I don't know. You had so much you could do with that, and it's irksome that that's the route that they went with. Like, what could Diana possibly want? Her dead boyfriend.
So in terms of him being back, though, I mean, I enjoy seeing him as an actor and his presence. You know, I love the Star Trek films, and he, you know, I can't say I've ever seen a film where I've not enjoyed seeing Chris Pine. I think he's a fairly good actor, and in the movie I did enjoy his cheekiness, and I enjoyed how it was flipped over between him and Diana, that he was the newbie and she was having to give him a tour of the 80s, and
which I love, people out of place in a certain time. Like, that is one of my favorite tropes in all of like Hollywood, is whenever you have someone that does not belong in the time period where they are. I love it. So yeah, I did like that part.
I think you wrote a comment about the breakdancing, didn't you? Like,
oh yeah, so that was ad-libbed from Chris Pine. So when they're walking down the street and they see the breakdancers, he was the one that just kind of threw that reaction in, and they kept it in the film.
So I think it's kind of nice. Not nice. I think the one bit I really did enjoy in terms of the action sequences, where he was driving the car with Diana, and she was obviously flipping tanks over and doing all that crazy Wonder Woman stuff. But he was fairly good in the action sequences, I thought. Like, I enjoyed that, and I can't take that away from the film. But I like the fact that he was really pushing Diana to move on, and so this kind of, I want to talk about this a little bit about the wish thing, which kind of really frustrated me, was that she wished him alive, yes. And obviously we don't know how these wishes work, because it's magic, and magic never really ever works perfectly. But he comes back to life in somebody else's body, who the title is described as handsome man.
Yeah.
So the title credits described as handsome man. Now, with that, it annoyed me a lot, because it made me think, well, is Diana really been a hero here? Because she seems to be fairly okay with the fact that he's just stolen someone's life,
right?
And she's really, like, doesn't want him to leave, even though, like, she's losing all her powers, losing against all the bad guys. You know, and it's just all really sloppy. And it's him, Chris Pine's character, Steve Trevor, is really having to, and the dude, so this made me laugh.
No, he was not. Thank you. when he was following her around, and he first heard, like, you first get a good look at his face, I was like, oh, that's the guy? That's the hit? No, thank you.
But anyway, like, the fact that she was okay with the life being stolen and all the rest of it, all these things, but it's Steve Trevor's the one pushing for him to move on, and for her to actually just, you know, go be a hero. So,
which is really also annoying, because he was the one, like, pushing her forward in the first film, which understandable in the first film, because this is her first time outside of Themyscira. But like, you literally brought Chris Pine back to do the exact same thing that he did in the first film. And it's just like, we've done this already. We have had her get help and get to realizing, you know, how powerful she is and how great she is. Why do we have to go through this again? Why does she need someone else to show her the ropes again? Like,
yeah, I don't know. I like I say, I like the character of Steve Pine. It just didn't need to be. But anyway, so we're actually just talking his moving on. That sequence, actually, I felt was quite a nice emotional scene, where they're saying goodbye, and he says a comment like, "I've already gone." I thought that was quite a nice touching moment. But like we've just said, we had that in the first film, so we've kind of just been given. It's just sloppy, isn't it? Really, we've just been given another ending of the same character in the sequel. I'll be so pissed off if they bring it back in the third film. Let's talk about Max Lord. So,
let me just start by saying, I absolutely love Pedro Pascal. He's so good in everything, and even if the role is shitty, he like goes all in. So it's what irks me the most about this was the entire film. I was like, I have no idea why he is collecting other people's wishes. I don't understand that at all. Like, what am I missing? What was I missing with him collecting all the wishes.
Okay, so I think on the second watch I got it. I didn't get it the first time, so I watched it the second time. So this is how I understand the wish stone to work. Right, okay, so with Diana, she makes a wish for Steve Trevor to come back, and there's a consequence to it. So the consequence is that she starts to lose her powers. Barbara wishes to be like Diana, but that means that she starts to lose her own humanity. Now, if you see that throughout the movie, Max Lord, every time he asks someone to make a wish, I don't know if you can remember, every time he says a wish, he says something afterwards about what he's going to take from them. Now, I thought that was just him saying, I'm going to take this, and I didn't understand it. But he actually makes a comment in the movie that now he's the wish stone, he can choose what he takes from them. So essentially, it means he gets a million wishes, because he just has to say to somebody powerful, what do you wish? And so they'll make their wish, but then he'll straight away say, well, this is what I'm taking from you. I don't really understand why you'd want to become like that. I mean, they did show a montage, I think, towards the end of the film about him having a poor upbringing. And I kind of, my assumption on this is more around him wanting to be a really great person and really powerful. I still didn't really understand it, but
but why was he dying? So is that the consequence? Like, you make this wish, but it takes your life force?
I'm assuming that no human can have that much power. And he was human. And they did make a reference about this being something that God created. So maybe maybe. So
he was just a bad vessel, is kind of what it boils down to. Okay,
so
I did not get that from the first one.
Maybe if he'd have walked around and maybe just done it sporadically, maybe he'd be okay. But he was literally doing 20 or 30 of these wishes a day, and that's probably going to be quite a lot on a human body, I would imagine. Not that I'm any expert in magic stones.
Be sure to put that in your profile from now on. An expert in magic stones.
Yeah, I'll put it on LinkedIn or something. So.
Yeah.
But anyway, I agree with you, Pedro Pascal, brilliant. And let's be honest, everybody, probably all loving him from The Mandalorian right now, and he doesn't even need to take off his helmet in The Mandalorian, and we still love him. I really hated him with this movie. I've got to say, he's the worst part about this film. I liked him because he was all in. He was an actor,
but he, sometimes people phone it in, and it's just kind of they hired me to do this movie, and I'm just collecting a paycheck. But he was so convincing as this horrible, basically an infomercial salesman on steroids. That's exactly what he was in this film.
Oh, here we go. The stone was made by tricks to God, so it never work out well for you. Yeah, no, I agree.
See? Yeah, that's why you shouldn't go taking things that are made by beings that you don't understand.
It should never play around. Well, to be honest, in any TV, movie, whatever, magic, they always say it, magic always has a bad consequence. Never mess with magic. It's like all these people that go and mess with magic. It's like they've never watched a movie or a TV.
Yes. Maybe they all assume that it's going to work out like Harry Potter, as opposed to it working out like some horrible, horrible thing. Sort of like Gremlins. You got this really cute thing, but you mistreat it, and all of a sudden it just turns into this hell demon.
Harry Potter seems to be the only franchise where magic seems. I mean, they just have mishaps with the magic, but there's no consequence to them using magic. They don't cast a spell and then they turn into something else themselves. That's the only franchise I can see that it's always when nothing happens to them. But anyway. So he comes into the movie about sort of half an hour into the franchise, into the movie, sorry, not franchise. And like you say though, he is all in terms of his acting. He's completely believable as this over the top 80s sort of villain. And apparently I am wrong. I didn't know that. So, apparently it does happen in Harry Potter about magic going wrong, but.
The only time that I can think of is when Ron casts the spells, but then it comes back to him, and now he's barfing up the slugs. See, I have not finished reading all the books with Harry Potter, so we could be misspeaking. Our apologies to all of you Potterheads out there.
I sorry if I've made a mistake. Concentrate on Harry Potter other day and maybe learn from our errors. But he yeah, it's thrown me off now talking about Harry Potter. Anyway, so he like you say, the acting in terms of his acting though is fantastic. Like he doesn't phone it in. He is completely believable. I just didn't enjoy him being in this film because I think that DC made the mistake that they make in a lot of films is that they put too much in. I would have been happy with a Barbara and Diana film, and I would have been happy if they'd stripped that out, find another reason for Barbara to become Cheetah. We'll talk about Cheetah and Barbara in a minute, but I would have been happy to have cut Max Lord out and saved that for another movie. Like I always feel that the superhero film's biggest mistake is when you start sticking in loads of villains. I don't mind it like with the Christopher Nolan films where they have like a minor villain like Scarecrow. You saw him in the third film in a much minor role, and even the first film in a fairly minor role. But they kind of made Max Lord and Barbara two big villains that took up a lot of screen time. Where probably I'd love to actually sit down and work out how many minutes Diana had compared to the villains of this movie. So yeah, it was. I don't know. Like you say, there's a lot of throwback to 80s movies in this as well with him.
But that brings up a good question though. Like, how is it that you made this sequel to Wonder Woman and the title character, Wonder Woman, is basically a passenger in her own film? Like, why does she have equal or less screen time than so many other characters? It makes no sense.
Yeah, it kind of made me think of sort of the Batman films of the 90s, you know, with George Clooney and Michael Keaton and Val Kilmer, where they, although their names were on the cover, they were secondary characters to the villains. So, what was this? We're not pleasing you, but you're right about how magic is treated in movies and stories. Humans shouldn't play with magic. We shouldn't be godlike. Too much knowledge, power, like the Garden of Eden. I mean, that's true. Yeah, but that's the thing. Like, humans are so dumb, right? Like, they get so excited about, oh my god, I got this magic thing. I mean, you even see it in films like Aladdin when Jafar is the one that abuses the powers of the genie. Like, oh, you know what? You're only going to give me 3 wishes? Screw you, man. Turn me into a genie and I'll have all the wishes I want. And it's like, that's not how it works, son. Yeah, no. But then again, I guess if you didn't have these stupid humans to do these stupid things, then you wouldn't drive forward the plot of most movies and TV shows. And so, Robbie's in the house. Station, man.
What's up, Robbie?
You're coming in after we've just come into the end of talking about our Max Lord. So like I say, I would have been quite happy to have seen him cut out of this movie. But anyway, let's talk about Cheetah. So
they did Cheetah dirty. I'm just saying. Cheetah is one of my favorite characters from back in the day, like early 2000s when they had the Justice League cartoon on the Cartoon Network. And as a counterpart, they had the Injustice League. And man, I'm telling you, Cheetah had some of the best one-liners in that entire series. She was fantastic. And then this is the version of Cheetah that we get. I'm not going to fault Kristen Wiig. I love her. And I was surprised that she actually does serious just as well as she does comedy. But like the way that they brought in Cheetah was a mistake. Like, you took this woman and you basically played her vulnerabilities against her. And so, like, I don't know. It's just like, imagine if your insecurities came back and like turned against you. I mean, it was awful the way that her wish kind of came about. I hated the way and then like at the very end of the film, she's just kind of left there like, wow, shit, now what do I do?
She's not given a real ending. So
no, not at all.
Well, actually, I didn't actually finish talking about Max Lord. Actually, the ending of Max Lord versus her ending, he actually gets what I felt was actually a fairly good ending. Him reunited with his son, and
I mean, sure, he's probably going to go to jail, but like he still gets his kid back, you know?
Yeah, and then Cheetah, like you say, her ending is just kind of her sort of on a rock looking up. So yeah, I mean, yeah, Robbie's saying here, terrible interpretations of villains for me. Like I'm not as familiar with Max Lord and Cheetah as probably I think you are, and I remember reading one story where it was a long time ago. I can't remember, it was a DC Countdown where Wonder Woman actually from memory, I think, killed Max Lord, which I thought was a really cool story. Yeah, so the cheetah thing, I did actually enjoy the interaction with Barbara and Diana at the beginning, and like going out for dinner and then building that friendship. And for me, I would have been really happy to have not had Max Lord come in, and I would have. Do you know what would have been cool actually? Is have one of the magic stones be something that just, I don't know, brings out the animal in you or something like that, and we could just cut Max Lord out of it, and she can just start to become cheetah on her own, like, and yeah, that would have been cool for me. I just love seeing the friendship between the two of them, and even like really late into the film, before she fully becomes the sort of apex predator as she asks to become, they still like even team up a little bit together up until the point where she meets the guy who tried to sort of attack her in the park, and then it's like a flip starts to be switched, and she doesn't like the idea of Diana trying to steal find a way to take away her powers, because she's enjoying becoming this character, you know, this kind of superpowered villain. I don't know.
Which basically, she's not even becoming a superpowered villain. They take this woman and they basically turn her into a Karen. Like, it doesn't make sense. I can let it slide that she beat up the dude who tried to like sexually harass her. I probably shouldn't, but I'll let that slide. But it didn't make any sense for her to be mean to the homeless guy. Like, she used to bring him food. She used to talk to this guy. Like, and now all of a sudden, the only way for you to show that she has changed is to just completely ignore her the way that she was before. Like, I don't buy that. I don't buy that just because this one bad thing happens to you, you automatically lose all of your personality. So that really annoyed me. And I was just like, we get it. Like, this is so basic. Oh, no, I'm a villain now. Let me go around kicking the people that I used to actually talk to on a regular basis.
I mean, if you think about her first wish, it was to be like Diana, and she said a few other things like sexy and cool and all the rest of it, but she didn't at any point ask to be aggressive and jealous and I mean, those were things she decided to become herself. Like, that was to do with, so like, you can you can show her losing part of herself, but like, you don't have to show her as this unrecognizable thing. Well, I mean, that's probably a lot of the male influence that actually helped write the script, so I wouldn't be surprised one bit that the comment was they treated her the way men think women are. Yeah, and I think, because you made a comment about Jasmine, about the homeless man, didn't you? Like, how she just suddenly, I think she treated him like not really nice in the beginning, and then sort of says to him like, well, I don't know, bugger off or something like that, you know. Later on, like, I don't know. I didn't really enjoy the interpretation of Cheetah. I would have liked, really, this just to have been about two women, like Diana and Barbara, and seeing their friendship. I would have been happy to have cut even Chris Pine out, not really had a love interest, cut out Max Lord. They'd have to have found, I'm not saying I've got the perfect answer to this, but find another reason why they clash.
Exactly. They could have, like you said, they could have cut those two out, and she could have learned a totally different lesson. Like, she's already learned about love. She's already experienced that in the first film. So in this film, we don't have to cover love all over again. I mean, it could be, or it could just be like a friendship type of love as opposed to like a romantic love. And it just, like, you missed out on this great opportunity because her and Barbara had good chemistry. They were funny. They were kind of like an odd couple because Barbara was so awkward and Diana was so confident and cool and calm. Like, it could have worked. You could have played this as sort of like a buddy cop drama gone wrong. But instead, you're just like, oh, fuck it, let's bring back the dead boyfriend. Okay, great. Thank you for that.
I mean, like, I think Real said earlier that there's just too many men in this film. It could have been actually a really strong female independent woman film, and I would have been on board with that.
And you know, it would have worked because it worked in Captain Marvel. It worked in Captain Marvel because what is her name? Carol. Carol, like, idolized her flight trainer. I can't remember her name, but Annette Bening's character. Like, that was a female friendship sort of relation, not romantic relationship, but it was like a female relationship driven film, right? Yes, there were men in it, but the men did not have significant impact on the way that Carol kind of functioned in her life. And it worked. Like, you could have done something similar with this. You had all of the right pieces together, and it's just like, you blew it. You guys blew it, and I don't understand why, because basically the first film set up the second film for greatness. Everybody was already shitting on Justice League before the first Wonder Woman came out, and it's kind of like, this is your opportunity. And when it did come out, and everybody was like, oh man, this is the best film that DC's done in the DC universe, yada yada yada. And then you take the sequel, and you just were basically like, oh, we just took this great thing, and we were just like, pfft.
I think, like you just said about the first Wonder Woman film just being amazing. Literally, everybody was saying the same thing. You know, everywhere. You were just hearing about how wonderful the Wonder Woman movie was, like the best one in the DCU. And yeah, like Reels is saying here, that they don't want. Well, I don't know what their motivations are behind the studios, but you know, I think I really would like to see a much stronger third film from them, much more female led. I would like to see less. I really hope that we can see less men.
Yeah, the third film should definitely have something to do, like going back to Themyscira. They could even introduce Nubia in the third film. Like, there is so much content they can still use to turn this franchise around. So I guess we have to bank on that, because this second film, this is probably one of the worst follow-up films. I mean, Mortal Kombat Annihilation comes to mind. Like, that sequel was freaking terrible compared to the first film, and this one is just, the whole time I'm watching it, I spent 90% of this film just kind of shaking my head like, I can't, because like I saw it a few days after it had already come out, and so like you started to hear the reviews, and the reviews are like, this movie is trash, this, that, and the other, and I'm like, no, it can't be that bad. Yeah, it can't be.
The last thing I wanted to talk about is the whole Apex Predator thing. So she's on the plane with Max Lord heading off to his studio so he can broadcast his wishes to the world. And he's like, what do you want to be? And she's like, I want to be an Apex Predator. She doesn't, from memory, doesn't say I wish to be an Apex Predator. But the way I understood it was you can only have one wish. So how does she then become the cheater? Like unless off screen. He gets somebody else to wish it for her or something.
But he also said on the plane that he can do whatever he wanted. So I took it to mean like, well, yeah, you've already had your one wish, but like, I'm a whole new stone, so I'll give you another wish. I don't know.
Okay, maybe that's how it works, but I mean, she did say...
That's probably not how it works. It's probably like a gross miscalculation on their part. They're like, how do we make this work? We'll write it in there, it'll be fine, nobody will notice.
Throughout the movie, as she had got her wish, when she started to dress like, you know, the sexier, the cooler, the more confident, she started to imprint, she started to build in leopard printing into her clothing. And I thought this was the adaptation that they were going to take, like not a full-on cheater. I thought they were going to kind of modernize it a little bit. And I was okay with that, because I just thought, okay, that's where they're going with it. And then when they went down the whole, suddenly I want to be an Apex Predator, and she shows up and she's looking like a cheater. And I was just like, how have we gone from this woman who is vulnerable and actually a really nice, quite a friendly character to this crazy, you know, in a 2.5 hour movie, we've gone quite a distance over what I can assume is probably not much more than 2 weeks in the movie. Like, I don't know, it was a disappointing ending to a character, and I really hope if they make a third one, they bring her back.
They really need to redo her completely, because Cheetah is such a badass. She's one of Wonder Woman's biggest foes, like in the comics. So it makes no sense the way that they just threw this together, and it's an insult to villains everywhere, honestly.
Let's talk about Asteria. What did you think?
I loved that they brought the original, the OG Wonder Woman back. I thought that was really cool. So Asteria was referenced slightly earlier in the film when you see this gold costume and saying that when the mankind enslaved the Amazons, the Amazons sent their greatest warrior, and that was the armor that she wore.
Yeah, and so I love the fact that Diana had a reason why that costume suddenly showed up. Actually, that wasn't as badly put in place as the invisible jet. I think.
No, it made sense, because she said she had come to where she was because she was looking for the armor. So she, you know, that was another. I guess after everything that happened with Ares and Dr. Poison in the first film, she was like, okay, so we got that taken care of. Let's move on. I'm gonna go find Asteria's armor. That's what I'm gonna do here, since I can't go back to Themyscira.
I think I like. So when the mid title sequence came up, and you just see like Linda Carter just sort of see her back originally, and I was like, oh, who's this? Like, so I was like, okay, well, where's this going? So when she turned around, initially I didn't like it, but then on the second viewing, actually, I thought, no, this is actually quite cool.
I thought it was sweet, yeah.
And I do like the way DC does embrace its previous actors, like Linda Carter played the president in the Supergirl TV series, and I love that DC does recycle a lot of their actors and actresses and bring them back. And like not recycle in a bad way, but they respect them and they want to bring them back and keep giving them work, really. And I love the fact they found another purpose for her in the movie franchise. So I thought that was quite a nice little touch for Linda Carter to bring her back. So let's hope this may lead into a more female-led movie for the third one.
Yeah, maybe in the third film she'll meet up with Diana and tell her more about, I don't know, the power of the rest of the Amazons or something. I just think that the third film needs to go back to Themyscira and like let's learn some more about some of these other badass women warriors.
Yeah, maybe like a prequel even, like, but I don't know. Let's just hope somebody can figure out a way to save this going forward. I kind of want to talk about a little bit about the 80s as well. Like, there wasn't, for me, enough for this for being an 80s movie. So, yeah, okay, there was the shopping mall scene and the mustaches that we touched on. But the music, I didn't even feel there was enough music. And we had mainly Hans Zimmerman's orchestra music throughout the movie, but there's a handful of tracks. I know there was like Frankie Goes to Hollywood and a few others. But, I mean, what did you think of sort of the setting and the tone of it and even the music?
If it hadn't been for the wardrobes, you never would have known this was an 80s film. I guess you can kind of figure it out. Like, I'm guessing that the American president that they were trying to portray was Reagan. So that could have been like an indication of what it was, or the fact that everybody was so gung-ho about oil in the Middle East. Like, maybe that could give you an indication that it's 80s. But I don't know. I guess it did not have an 80s feel to me. Although... So when I was watching it, my friend was like, do you think the CGI in this movie is bad because they're trying to make it feel more like an 80s movie? And I was like, no, I doubt that. But I thought the CGI was horrible, horrendous. That one scene where they're in Egypt and they're on that dusty road and she's like running next to the tanks. And I'm like, how did we get here? How did we go from her being like the CGI and the amazing like no man's land battlefield scene in the first Wonder Woman to like super cheesy, oh look, I'm running super fast next to the tank, and I'm just like, this is what am I watching? I don't understand. I just didn't understand how the quality dropped so much from the first film to the second film with all of the same people involved.
Do you know, like, we've had two comments here, fairly similar. Like, Emmanuel's saying here about the third movie, just Patty and Jenkins need to go. But then we've got one that's just actually almost sort of saying the opposite here about Reels. Do all the men need to?
Yes, well, to Reels' point, Jeff Johns has been taken off as a writer for the third film, so that's a start. But I think Patty Jenkins has a good eye. I don't think that my issues with this film were the nature of the way that the film was put together, the composition of the film. And I think Patty brings out the best in her actors. So I would not get rid of Patty, but I would definitely rearrange that writer's room. And if you're going to keep Patty Jenkins on as a writer, then you need to bring in another powerful female voice to fix this franchise. I don't think you need any more men in the writer's room. Now, producing and all of that other stuff, whatever, but I really think you need to bring in someone who can accommodate Patty's vision much better in the writer's room. And you can see the biggest difference between the way that Wonder Woman is portrayed in the first Wonder Woman film versus the way that Joss Whedon presented Wonder Woman in the Justice League. Like, in Justice League, there were so many just, like, ass shots, basically. It's like, oh, we're going up a ladder. Let's go up the ladder right behind Wonder Woman and look at her butt cheeks hanging out. And it's just like, come on, man. Like, Patty Jenkins did an entire movie that revolved around Wonder Woman, and never once did we get butt cheeks. So I don't think Patty needs to go, but I definitely think that they need another female voice in the writer's room.
Yeah, maybe there was just the screenplay was by two men and by Patty, so maybe there was too much of a male voice for this film.
Well, but you've got a big. I don't. After all this Ray Fisher stuff, I don't know where Jeff Johns still stands at DC, but Jeff Johns is a massive, massive presence at DC. So regardless of whatever Patty had to say, I'm pretty sure Jeff would have had a much bigger influence on scripting than she would have for this film.
Yeah, so to be honest, we'll come to a bit of a summary here and a conclusion of our thoughts on the film. I watched it twice, the movie. Watched it once, like I said, with family. Second time, I watched it on my own. I would say watching it a second time, I hate it less than I did the first time. And I think watching it a second time actually helped me understand a lot of the Max Lord stuff, which I found confusing, and his motivations and his powers and things like that. And it did really help me sort of get an understanding of why he wanted to be a wish stone, so that he essentially could just make more wishes. Why couldn't he have just wished for that? Wouldn't that have been simpler? Like, I don't know, give me 100
because
wishes.
Jafar did it first, so DC couldn't do it.
In summary, I would have also taken a different approach to Chris Pine. I said this sort of throughout the thing. I would have gone two ways with it. I would have left him dead, and I would have either with Diana, I would have either given her another love interest, or I would have actually taken a much braver approach and not given her a love interest and just made this film about Barbara and Diana, and even cut out Max Lord. So the first 30 minutes we didn't have any Max Lord other than a little cameo on one of the TVs quite early into the film, but we don't actually see Max Lord. I think it's literally 31 minutes into the movie, and I would have been again happy to have completely cut Max Lord out and just made this about two women, you know, hero and villain, and I would have loved to have seen the journey that Barbara went on from being, you know, sort of bumbly and clumsy and seeing her becoming like a kick-ass villain, and much more screen time for the two of them.
Right.
And maybe there needed to be, say, a third villain, so to speak, for them maybe to team up against or something, but maybe more of a minor villain, like, you know, a scarecrow type villain that, you know, rather than Max Lord, whose presence is really overbearing.
Yeah. But if you think about it, like the two friendship, the friendship between the two main characters could have worked. It works all the time, and Top Gun comes to mind. Like Maverick and Goose were best friends, and then when your best friend dies, that has a huge, huge impact on the way that you now go about the rest of your military service or whatever you want to call it. But friends, the bond of friendship is just as powerful when done right as like, my boyfriend died 60 years ago. Like you had it all right there, and you had the people that could have carried it, and you didn't do anything with it.
And my last thing I wanted to bring in was the setting. I didn't see any reason for this to be set in the 80s, and I didn't really feel that the 80s, the sort of the whole 80s theme and everything. Like you said about the way they dressed. Who would have known it was in the 80s, really? I felt it was unnecessary, and I'd rather they just set it in current time so we didn't have to worry or care about plot holes.
And why go all the way to the 80s and then go to the Middle East just to perpetuate like more of these bad Middle Eastern stereotypes? It's like we have plenty of bad people here that are part of oil and gas. Like and I say that coming from an oil and gas city. Like you easily could have been like, oh, let's go, you know, talk to that Texas tycoon, or, you know, like there's so many other things they could have done with this film, and I'm just like, you guys leave me scratching my head with the choices that you make here.
Is there any final thoughts you want to give?
This movie, I didn't hate this movie, but this movie was a massive, massive disappointment. It was just, it was one of those things where I'm like, I don't even know how we got from the first one to this one. I really don't. I don't even see a thread, other than Steve Trevor. There's no thread connecting these two films. There's nothing for me to have been a fan of the first film and then to watch this film. None of that magic translated from one film to the next.
Oh yeah, actually, Reels has got a good point there. Like the costumes, I hadn't even thought really to talk about it too much, but the costumes were amazing. I actually really love Wonder Woman's costume. I think it's really, like, I love how the modern update of it compared to Linda Carter's TV costume, and I don't know if you ever saw, there was a TV pilot. Oh, damn, I can't remember the actress's name. But there was a TV pilot that never got picked
Oh yeah,
up.
she was also in Supernatural. She was gonna be in the Wonder Woman series.
She's the girl in the. I'll have to look it up later. But yeah, there was a TV pilot that never got picked up, and she had like long trousers instead of a skirt. Even that costume was terrible. Like, but the Wonder Woman costume in the movie, I think, is really good. And
the gold armor was beautiful. I loved the wings. That was gorgeous.
Yeah, I really loved that gold armor costume and everything. Obviously, Max Lord's costume is just a suit. But I did love Barbara embracing sort of like the leopard print as the movie went on.
Oh yeah, when she walked into that gala party, I was like, "Damn, girl."
I didn't like her being actually as a cheater, but yeah. So so to summarize, we normally on our weekly podcast we have a rating system out of 5. We've given this a very generous 2.5 out of 5, and that brings our Wonder Woman review to a close. I hope you all enjoyed our first Geeks Unleashed live YouTube video. Thanks for joining in.
Yes, thank you so much for your comments too.
Yeah, and I appreciate the interaction. We didn't really know how this was going to go for a first one, so appreciate it. We'll be back next week to discuss Man of Steel, and we'll be working our way through them. So anyway, you can check out our weekly Geeks Unleashed News and Reviews podcast, which comes out every week on Sunday. It's going to be available on Podbean, Google, Apple Podcasts, Spotify, basically anywhere you get your podcasts.
Yeah, and don't forget, we did start a second podcast series where we tackle some of the most essential graphic novels of all time. Our 4th Late to the Party Book Club episode was Monstrous by Marjorie Liu and Senna Takeda. That episode dropped at the beginning of January, and our next book for the month of February is March by the late Representative John Lewis. So be sure to join us for that one. That's going to be dropping the 1st or 2nd week of February.
That's right. You can also follow us on social media. We're on Instagram, Facebook, Twitter, obviously YouTube, Geeks Unleashed. Anyway, thanks for joining us, and we'll see you next week.
Bye.
Bye, everyone.